Okay, we are going to continue with our second presentation of this free presentation track. The next presentation is by Jean-Ian Boutin from ESET on the evolution of Webinjects, specifically with banking trojans. Jean-Ian.
Yeah. So hi everyone, thank you for attending my talk. So as Rigard said, my talk will be about the evolution of Webinjects. So this all started because I've been researching banking trojan for several years now. And basically, once you get to a point where you look at the different Webinjects that these banking trojans are using, you see some code reuse. And you see that some of the injects they are using are the true attack code that are used to get login information, attempt fraudulent transfers, and all these kinds of nefarious things. So it sparked the question, like, is there a common banking trojan, like a common Webinject platform that is used by several banking trojans worldwide? And just to make a link with what we've seen a while ago with black hole exploit kit, so some kind of Webinject platform that would be ubiquitous, basically. But before trying to answer this question, we'll take a quick look at the evolution of Webinjects. So this is going to be the first section. Then I'm going to look at the commoditization of the injects. Then we're going to take a quick look at the emergence of popular kits, and finally how these Webinjects are actually delivered to the bots. So let's first start with the evolution. So at the very beginning, the banking trojans were using keyloggers. So they were using keyloggers to gather login information, password. Then they moved on to form grabbing, and they are still using form grabbing. So how this works is that they will inspect GET post requests coming out of specific website trying to gather login information and basically any data that is sent to the server. Then came along Webinject. So they realized that by actually hooking the web browser, they could actually inject code into the web page a user is seeing, meaning that they could control what the user is seeing and they could actually interact with the web page content. At the very beginning, there were only a couple of banking trojans using them. It was specific to the particular platform. Only a couple of institutions were available, most of the time geolocated. But of course, as things have evolved, as banking trojans are now sold commonly on underground forums, there are a lot more institutions that are targeted now. So we will take a quick look at the popular Webinject format. So this is the Zeus Webinject format, but this format is now used by a wide array of banking trojans. And this is a good thing for inject coders that we'll talk about later on. So this allowed them to actually have a common format that they can use to write their injects. So we'll briefly take a look at different keywords that are present in the Webinject configuration file. So the configuration file that is downloaded by the bot from the CNC server. So the set URL here you see, it will specify the target URL. Then at the end, you can have some flags. In this case, it's GP. This is for get post. So that means that it will inspect get post requests coming out of the browser, basically. There are other flags that can log the actual content of the web page as well. Other keywords like data before and data after. So that will tell the banking trojan where to actually inject the code. And this is, of course, the code. So this one is very simple, but sometimes you can have complex code and a large portion of code there. So let's take a quick look at the meaningful capabilities now included in some Webinjects. So first you have login grabber. So this is very simple, where when the user is logging in one of his accounts through a compromised computer, the Webinject will grab the login information. Then it can inject additional fields into a web page. So these fields will usually try to gather more personal information, credit card information, these kind of things. Then you have something called balance grabber. So whenever the user accesses account, the Webinject will be able to see the balance on each account and maybe choose the one with the highest one. Then you have balance changer. So as people are trying to make fraudulent transfers, then these Webinjects will be able to hide the fact that some money was transferred if the user is accessing his account through the compromised computer. Then you have the TAN grabber. So TAN means transaction authorization number. We'll see a bit later what these are exactly, but it's a security measures put by a bank to make the overall process of online banking a bit more secure. And of course, the Webinjects are trying to get these TAN from the user. And finally, you have automatic transfer systems. You can see ATS is the acronym in an easy for Avtozaliv, sorry, Russian pronunciation. So this is a Russian name, basically. And these systems are used to try to make automatic transfer going on without the user knowing them. So we'll first take a look at what I call the Phish-like inject. So here you see a form that is injected as the user is trying to access one of his accounts. So you see that several fields are added. So if the user actually go and type all this information, once it says continue, then all of this information will be sent back to the CNC server so that the fraudster can actually use this information. Here it says that it's for verification purposes, that the user must update some of their information. Of course, this is all fake. And it's really the Webinject that is residing in the browser that is doing all the work. So this is very simple code that can achieve that. And it might not be as lucrative, but it is a very simple way to try to gather personal information from a compromised computer. Of course, other systems are much more complex. So automatic transfer system, what they are trying to do is really as soon as the user is logging into his bank account, they will try to make a transfer from the victim's account to a money mule account. All of this automatically. So the botmaster doesn't have to interact with anything. And as the banks, of course, they're not sitting idle. They are trying to add new security measures, such as two-factor authentication. So some of these systems have means to try to bypass these security measures. We were seeing a lot of these in the past months, years, but now it seems like there are some kind of reduced popularity because the code to use to be able to do automatic transfer systems is very complex. So the banks seems to have catch up, and now we see more people trying to do more simple web injects that will try to gather information from the victim, and then we'll do some manual transfer instead of trying to automate the overall process. What you see here in the screenshot is actually a function that you can say, well, include a random timeout between actions. So this is a snapshot from a Webinject I found, and basically to try to bypass some anomaly detector that might be put in place by banks, you can have random timeouts between different actions, such as browsing to a different web page, trying to specify the account number, and these kind of actions. So since we're in the US, and I'm not sure if any US banks are actually using to a transaction authorization number, I just want to briefly say what they are. So here on the left, you see the chip TAN. So this is a mechanism where the user will be asked to enter a PIN, and then a transaction authorization number will be given by the little machine. And this is needed for critical operations, such as logging into an account or attempting transfers. The other one is mobile TAN. So in MTAN, the user will receive an SMS containing a code, a unique one that is always changing, of course, and he must input them into the web page he's seeing so that the action can go through. Of course, the fraudster went too far behind to try to grab these TAN. This is a form that is injected into a web page that will ask the user for a specific TAN. In this particular case, they're saying that they need to verify their unique digital signature. Of course, I've seen a wide array of different lies to try to lure the user into giving up a TAN, and this is only one of them. As I said, there are also mobile TAN. And what the fraudsters are trying to do in this case is sometimes they're trying to make the user install a mobile malware on their phone. So here you can see a form that was injected as the user is accessing one of their accounts through a compromised computer, asking them several information about their mobile phone. If they go ahead and enter all of this, then they will be able to download a malware on their phone, and then they have to manually install it. Of course, this is very complex. Not complex, but there are a lot of steps to be done by the user, so it's not, the user must really be convinced that it's really their bank that are doing this, because the mobile phone will actually tell them that this is an insecure thing. This mobile malware thing, it happened several years ago. So in 2010, there was Zeus in the mobile that appeared, which was first for Symbian platforms, and then they were added to Android and BlackBerry. And that was a mobile malware that was specific for Zeus. Of course, we saw several others, such as Paya in the mobile, Carbub in the mobile. But now we see mobile commoditization as well. So we will review this, but that means that some mobile malware are now sold in underground firms, which are able to interact with most of the banking Trojan platform, they're not tied to a specific platform. So I want to bring your attention to this word there. So this is Facebook. So basically, this specific inject was targeting Facebook. So in the past, Webinjects have targeted a lot of financial institutions, but there are a lot of Webinjects targeting popular web services as well. So usually they are Phish-like Webinjects, as I called them earlier. So as soon as the user will try to access one of his accounts through a compromised computer, it will be asked for personal information, credit card information, and if he actually input them, then these will be sent to the CNC. So the Webinjects now are not only restricted to financial institutions. So that's it for the Webinject evolution. So as you can see, there are many things that have evolved throughout the past, and you see that some of these code is really complex. So if we look at automatic transfer system or scripts that can automatically change account balance and these kind of things. So that led to Webinject commoditization. So people specializing into writing these inject code as their complexity were increasing. And of course, when people are trying to write injects, some custom tools appear. So here you see a screenshot of Config Builder. So that was part of the Carberb leak that happened a while ago. And this is a tool specifically written to ease the process of writing web injects. So there are an Internet Explorer embedded in this where you can debug and test all the injects you're writing. Some of the banking Trojans will try to target a wide array of institutions in a wide array of countries, and some of them will try to target specific countries in the specific regions. That's it. So, of course, there are Webinjects sold in underground firms for that. So here you see a guy called MX00077, which is selling what he calls cheap Webinjects. And he even has a website that you can see here. And he has injects for several countries throughout the world. And whenever you click on these flags, you get to a point where several institutions are also targeted per countries. Since I'm from Canada, I'm fond of official languages. And in Canada, the institutions that are present in Quebec, which is a French province in Canada, have both French and English. So there's little attention to detail. But you can see that the New Zealand flag is not quite right there. So there are some mistake done by these guys. So he will sell mostly Phish-like injects, and on average, they sell it for $100. So it's not something that is very, very expensive. And he actually lists all the platforms that are compatible, and he also lists if it's compatible with different browsers, so Internet Explorer, Chrome, and Firefox. But other sellers are selling wares that are way more complex. So Yumba is another seller that is specializing into selling automatic transfer system web injects. In this particular post, you see that he is bundling Percolate with his web injects. Percolate is a mobile malware that was sold in underground firms that would be able to divert SMSs from the victim phone to the attacker phone, meaning that they could intercept the MTAM that the bank would be sending to the victim phone. And Percolate was the first platform-independent mobile malware that had several designs for several banks around the world. So you could buy it and bundle it into your banking Trojan, allowing you to bypass this MTAN security measure. Interestingly, Percolate was bundled at this point, but I found out that later on he switched to iBanking. So iBanking is another mobile malware that is available in underground firms, but is much more advanced. So you can record calls, steal SMSs, steal contact information. So it's interesting to see that the offering is evolving through time as well. And the other point I want to make here is that this guy who is targeting, in this particular one, I think it's a Dutch bank, a German bank, he knows that mobile TAN are used by this bank, so he will go ahead and try to bundle as many tools as possible to make the process of defrauding people easier. Of course, as things are becoming more complex and as people are buying them on the internet, well, they need a way to control them. So most of the inject coders who are selling ATS, so web injects which are more complex, are also bundling administration panel with their offering, meaning that they can have information on each bot that is compromised, being able to have account information and, let's say, specify drop account for different bots, and also attempt automatic transfer through them. And Also, the different coders, they are now offering different partnerships. So usually you see two types of offering for Webinjects, so public and private. So public Webinjects will be available to anyone. So the coder will build them, and then you can buy them, but they are available to anyone that has money to buy them. In the private mode, then it will code something specific for you, specific for particular banks that will fit your needs, and you can actually, you gain ownership of the Webinjects, and then you can resell it. So several coders really explain that in a lot of detail how these partnerships work. One thing I've seen that made me curious is that one guy was looking for people that were willing to share revenue of a botnet. So he would be providing Webinjects targeting institution that this botnet was present in, and he would ask for a share of the revenue. So it's interesting because you get to a point where these things, in the eye of the coder at least, are so complex that they mean that they are entitled to get a portion of the revenue. So with the commoditization, now that you have a lot of product on sale in different underground forum, you have everything that is required to get to a point where some kits will be more popular than others. So in this section, I will show you two different kits that I've seen in several banking Trojans that are very prevalent. The first one is ATSEngine. So this is the panel of the ATSEngine, and this is from the guy who was selling the percolate, so Yumba. So this is what he is selling. And I've seen them in several banking Trojan, as you can see here. And this guy has full ATS Webinjects for a wide array of institutions. He can do TAN mitigation, he can do, he's bundling mobile malware, so we've seen that he's bundling Percolate, but he's also bundling iBanking with it. And he has one framework that I found interesting. So he has something he calls a full information grabber framework. So usually how these works is that you have this Webinject configuration file that will be downloaded by the CNC, and that will contain specific injects for each institution. So you will get, let's say if you are targeting 10 US banks and 10 Canadian banks, then you will have all of these separated in the configuration file. But this guy, what he's doing is that he built a framework where his injects are compatible with a wider array of banks. So it will detect on which website you are, and then it will reuse most of the Webinject content to target specific institutions. And he has a web panel for this, so you don't have to try to get all of the information from different panels. In the same panel, you get all of the banks that you are targeting. Another platform that I've seen quite a lot is called Injeria. Here you see that it's downloaded from an external server. And you see at the very end that the URL has a very specific format. So there is a base64 encoded part to it. And let's take a quick look at what this base64 decode to. And what it will is that you have the project type with the project name. So the project name will usually be the name of the banks that is targeted by this specific platform. And then you have these keywords just before the dash. And in the log thing, they will try to harvest some personal information from the victim account. So in the log, let's say credit card information, login information, SSN, these kind of things. For the mob in the app, they will use a mobile malware. So they will try to lure the user into installing a mobile malware so that the mobile TAN can be obtained. Then finally, for the rec one, this is when, let's say, chip TAN are used. So the pictures we saw earlier, so they have no way to actually infect the device. So they will try to use social engineering to get this TAN, saying to the user that, let's say, a test transfer must be conducted, and then the user might provide the code. So of course, before knowing which platforms are popular, we need a way to actually track them. So I will briefly explain how I'm doing this process. So since the same coder are producing this ware, you get to a point where you can actually feel that it is the same guy doing it. So you have function names which are similar, code structure which is similar as well, the URL that they are using, because most of the time they will include the admin panel URL in the Webinject. So all of this, you can get a feeling that this is the same guy. Then the admin panel design, so I showed you two different panels. So if you actually browse you to this panel and that the panel design is the same, this is another hint that the same coder is behind it. And if you are lucky enough to get your hand on the underground adverts, then you can do some feature correlation. So if you have an inject that is targeting a specific bank that is using a mobile malware, and then you know that the guy is advertising for this specific bank with this mobile malware, then you have a good feeling that it is coming from the same coder. Of course, you cannot be 100% sure, but if all of these things are grouped together, then you can have a high level of confidence that this is exactly the same guy. We'll go through this process for the ATSEngine. So that was the first kit I was showing you earlier. Here you see that it's an external download, and it's adding a number at the very end of the URL based on the current date. So of course, for a DOM automatic analysis, they will never be able to actually get to this other JavaScript because you need some interpreter to have the full URL. And Yumba is using this trick all over the place. So it's not with only that, this is certainly not a proof that this is the guy, but it gives you a hint. If you download the JavaScript, this is a very small snippet of what could be downloaded in this particular case. You have comments that are present in the file, which are always the same, and you have specific variables as well that are used. Here you see onLink, and this is actually the link to the admin panel. So with all this in place, you know by looking at the code that this is familiar, then you have the external JavaScript that is downloaded that contains a lot of information that is similar to what Yumba is doing, and then you have this admin panel which is similar, so you can have a pretty good feeling of who is behind these things. So the last section I want to discuss now is Webinject delivery. So of course, as people are buying them in underground forums, things have changed a bit, how these Webinjects are delivered and how they are stated in the Webinject configuration file. So this is the first thing we're going to look at. Here you see an external download. So the inject code that will be injected in the browser is only a URL. So you don't have access to nothing else. And this is Injeria. You can see the base64 thing that will decode to one of the projects I've shown earlier. And the other way to provide these injects is by inlining them directly in the Webinject configuration file. So when the bot will download them from the CNC, then everything is there in the Webinject. So there's no further steps that are needed to analyze the Webinjects completely. Let's take a quick look at the advantages of external download of JavaScript. So of course, you can in the forensic analysis, because if you get to a computer that has never accessed this banking page, and you will not be able to see what was the content of the JavaScript. And maybe the server is down at this point, so you have no way of actually knowing what the JavaScript would do at this point. It also enables feature-based selling, so some of the coder will charge different prices for different feature. So let's say if you want balance grabber, balance modification, then by providing the script on the external server, it's easier for them to actually play with that. And maintenance as well, because some of the inject coder will actually try to obfuscate as much as possible the inject that they are selling, so that the user cannot reuse them or resell them. So if you have a piece of obfuscated code, it becomes very difficult to get to a point to maintain it yourself. So by having this, it's way easier. And of course, the Webinject code do not need to be downloaded right away. You can wait a bit until the guy actually visits the website. So I just want to show you quickly the external server interaction. So when you have a Webinject server, then that means that as a security researcher, you can actually interact with the server. Here you see a Webinject framework with, there's a distinctive use of obfuscation for the function name, but of course the most distinctive thing is how it interacts with the external server. So it will call the server with a specific function name, and the server will answer back with this function, and this function will be inserted dynamically into the web page and be executed by the browser. Here you see that it's providing state information, but of course you can have a real code. So whenever you download this script from the external server, you really have to go through all the steps to get to a point where you get all the information you need to really study this script. The last thing I want to show you about this is by playing with it, you might get to a point where you get to something very interesting. So this is a drop account for a mule. So by interacting and really understanding how these web injects are working, I was able to get to these information. So this is very valuable for security researcher because you can do notification, you can know, you can have a better understanding of how these people are operating. So all of this means that it's harder as well to get information from the Webinject because you really have, so these servers are stateful, so you get to a point where to get all the information you need, you have to respect some order. You cannot just try to leech all the content from it. So this goes for images, but also for mobile malware components and all of this. So you really need to have a good understanding of what's going on. So, in conclusion, we've seen that Webinjects have evolved tremendously in the past few years, and that in the several banking trojan, it's actually the true attack code, so the code that will bring some benefits to the fraudster. Webinject commoditization is well in place, so there are several coders that are targeting several institutions throughout the world. And as different Webinject platforms are available, well, some are more popular than others. So if we go back to my original question, asking, well, is there one specific platform that is like ubiquitous? Well, the answer is no, but there are certainly some that are way more popular than others. So thank you.
Okay.